So I'm a pretty big fan of Christopher Nolan. Real hot take, I know. He's one of my top 5 favorite directors, he's been a force for good in many aspects of the film industry, and I believe his 4-film, 5-year run from 2005 to 2010 is the kind of output most directors never come close to reaching. But I also don't think his work is beyond reproach. After the well-intentioned but obviously hampered Dark Knight Rises, Nolan entered an era where it felt like his films were openly responding to reoccurring criticisms. Oh, you think I can't do emotional storytelling? Here's Interstellar. Oh, you think my non-linear storytelling is a gimmick? Let me put it in a type of film that practically demands to be told in sequential order and show you that it works. Oh, you think I overload my films with exposition? Let me make a film with a plot so dense, then buried under poor sound mixing, so you'll have no choice but to go along with it while barely understanding it. Yeah, there's plenty to like about these 3, but they all felt compromised in one way or another. But then Nolan seemed to break that trend with Oppenheimer, a genuinely excellent film that builds up, then deconstructs the great man theory while centering on one of the 20th century's most influential figures, for better or for worse. Mostly worse. It juggles nearly 24 great performances, it plays to Nolan's strengths as a storyteller, delivers thematic and literal bombshells at just the right moments, and even sprinkles in some self-reflection on Nolan's part for his role in the current IP-driven Hollywood landscape, though how much credit/blame he deserves versus how much he thinks he deserves is a topic for another day. Critically, Oppenheimer wound up being Nolan's most successful film, earning him both the Best Picture and Best Director Oscars that had previously eluded him. And then the big question became, how would he follow it up? The answer turned out to be adapting a story that, despite being one of the oldest in recorded history, felt tailor-made for his talents. See, I often view Nolan as the yin to Steven Spielberg's yang. Spielberg wants his storytelling to incite big emotions, while Nolan is laser-focused on the form and function of storytelling. His preference is a story where a guy, or a group of guys, come together to complete a job that he can explain and demonstrate with minute detail. And for him, emotions, while significant and often a character's underlying motivation, are usually a distraction that can lead to one's undoing. It's why one of his best films is a heist, it's why so much of his Batman trilogy is about explaining how Bruce operates, and why his magnum opus is about a group of guys building a bomb and the many meetings set before, during, and after the building of said bomb. With the Odyssey, you have a story where one man has a simple mission to complete: get home. And Odysseus being the patron saint of wife guys, and the story usually being told out of sequential order, are just icing on the cake. This was a perfect fit for Nolan, and he knocked it out of the park anyway. In case you didn't have to read a translation in high school, here are the cliff notes for the Homeric poem. Odysseus is a Greek king and general who served in the Trojan War. He's the one who comes up with the idea for the big wooden horse, helps the Greeks win the war by sacking Troy, and sets off with his men to return to his home of Ithaca. Except what's supposed to be a relatively short trip winds up being a decade-long, torturous journey where bad luck, bad decisions, and being on the wrong side of multiple deities keeps delaying our hero. All the while, Odysseus' wife Penelope has suitors banging down her door to claim Ithaca's throne. So their son Telemachus sets out to find people who served with his father in the hopes one of them might know if he's still alive and where he is. The story of how Odysseus won the Trojan War and the episodic chapters of his voyage are all either told by people Telemachus meets or by Odysseus himself, slowly regaining his memory while marooned on an island with a woman named Calypso. Since this is a story that has been adapted, translated, and retold an ungodly number of times, the fun is watching which parts Nolan keeps and which themes he decides to elaborate on. The Cyclops, the trip to the underworld, and the encounter with various monsters are all here, all brilliantly realized, and always allowing for just enough time for the audience to go, "You gotta be frickin' kidding me," right before another batch of Odysseus' men are slaughtered. I especially appreciated that for how out there the film gets with some of the creature designs. He doesn't go the obvious route with depicting Hades, yet still makes it a terrifying encounter. On top of that, Nolan adds in a political chess game Odysseus and his family are forced to play as a result of his long absence, which lets the Ithaca characters be a bit more proactive and further builds the intrigue for the long-awaited and incredibly satisfying final act. But there's also plenty Nolan spliced out of this version. While the Greek gods are big role players in most adaptations, Nolan keeps it vague as to whether or not they're even real or are directly intervening at any point, even the one that seems to keep appearing to Odysseus throughout the journey. I get Nolan's decision to play things down the middle and not go full mythological with this. Beyond the magic and monsters, the film is trying to play things as realistically as possible, but the decision does have some negative side effects, the biggest being what it does to Calypso's subplot. Despite her usually presenting the biggest challenge to our hero and her arc being the most time-consuming roadblock, Nolan effectively punts on large chunks of her story, leaving her as little more than an emotional support figure. Were she not played by Charlize Theron, I'd imagine most viewers unfamiliar with the poem would wonder why she's even here. Also, Odysseus' tendency to be too clever for his own good is noticeably toned down this time, though to Nolan's credit, that decision leads to a pair of thematic masterstrokes, elevating the film from just great to excellent. The first is the decision to give Odysseus another motivation on top of merely wanting to get home that ties back to the most famous piece of Trojan War iconography, though I won't dare spoil how. And the second is a genuine surprise in that the Odyssey is in direct conversation with Oppenheimer. While that film leaves audiences with its main character sitting with the weight of a world-changing decision, Nolan hits the same note again with the Odyssey, then dares to ask what comes next. And rather than embracing darkness and demise, the ending pushes for hope and optimism, a message the world desperately needs right now. As for performances, Matt Damon is outstanding and delivers in every phase of Odysseus' hellacious journey. Anne Hathaway does some great work with what could easily have been a thankless role. Tom Holland finally gets to flex his acting abilities in a role other than Peter Parker, and Robert Pattinson is having an absolute blast as a Littlefinger-esque schemer. And while it doesn't quite replicate the balancing act Oppenheimer pulled off in utilizing its cast, John Barenthal, Lupita Nyong'o, Hamish Patel, Mia Goth, John Leguizamo, Elliot Page, and Samantha Morton all get small moments to shine. The Odyssey is fantastic. Whether you're a fan of the original story, a fan of Nolan, or simply love movies, this one is worth it. It's another impressive feather in Nolan's cap. It'll be on most top 10 lists by year's end, and expected to be at the center of the next award season conversation. It absolutely lives up to the hype. See it in IMAX, enjoy the ride, and thanks for watching.